Yuna was sitting alone in her small apartment when her communicator lit up with an urgent signal. She had been looking at old photographs. Her younger brother smiled back at her from the screen, frozen forever at 23 years old. He had died in the third year of the war, on a distant moon whose name she could not pronounce. She put the photographs away and read the message. The Korath Empire wanted a human envoy. Not just any envoy. Queen Valora herself had made the demand. The ancient ruler, who had crushed 1,000 civilizations, wanted to speak with humanity face to face. Yuna closed her eyes. 5 years of war. Millions dead on both sides. Cities burned to ash. Ships torn apart in the cold darkness between stars. And now, after 18 months of uneasy silence, the queen wanted to talk. It had to be a trap. The next morning, Yuna stood before the Council of Earth. The room was full of tired faces. Generals with gray hair and heavy eyes. Politicians who had aged decades in just 5 years. Scientists who had turned their brilliant minds toward weapons and destruction. "It is obviously a trap," said Admiral Kang. He was an old man now, though he had been young when the war started. The Korath do not negotiate. They conquer. This is some kind of trick. "Perhaps," said Yuna, "but we cannot ignore it." "Why not?" asked General Su. She had lost her entire family in the bombing of Seoul. Her voice was always cold now. "Let them wait. Let them wonder. We owe them nothing." Yuna understood the anger. She felt it, too, deep in her chest, like a fire that never went out. But she had learned something important in her years as a diplomat. Anger was useful. Anger gave you strength. But anger alone would get you killed. "If we refuse," Yuna said carefully, "we learn nothing. If we go, we might learn something valuable. Their intentions, their weaknesses, their fears." The room went quiet at that last word, fears. It was strange to think about. The Korath were giants, 8 feet tall, covered in scales that could stop a bullet. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. What could they possibly fear? But Yuna had noticed something. In every battle, in every encounter, the Korath soldiers showed an emotion that did not match their overwhelming power. It looked like caution. It looked like nervousness. It looked like fear. The council argued for 3 more hours. In the end, they agreed to send Yuna. She would not go alone. Captain Tay, a decorated military officer, would lead a small security team. Hana, a xenobiologist who had studied the Korath for years, would provide scientific support. And Minho, an engineer who had survived the very first battle of the war, would maintain their ship. It was a small group, too small to be a threat, but perhaps that was the point. The night before departure, Yuna visited the memorial wall. It stood in the center of New Geneva, a massive structure of black stone that stretched for nearly a mile. Every surface was covered with names, millions of names. Every human who had died in the war was remembered here. Yuna walked slowly along the wall until she found the name she was looking for, Park Jiwoo, her brother. She touched the carved letters with her fingertips. "I don't know if this will work," she whispered. "I don't know if they want peace or if they want to kill me, but I have to try. I have to believe that all of this meant something, that you died for something." The stone was cold under her fingers. "I will make your death mean something," she promised. "I will find a way." The ship was called the Horizon. It was small and fast, built for diplomacy rather than war. Yuna stood on the bridge as they left Earth's orbit. Through the viewport, she watched her home planet grow smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among billions. 14 days to Korath Prime," said Captain Tay. He was a tall man with a serious face and kind eyes. He had fought in dozens of battles and survived them all. But he did not boast about his victories. He only spoke of the friends he had lost. 14 days, Yuna repeated. Time enough to prepare. Hana joined them on the bridge. She was younger than the others, with quick eyes and a curious mind. "I have been studying everything we know about Queen Valora," she said. She has ruled for 3,000 years. 3,000 years. Can you imagine? She has seen empires rise and fall. She has watched species evolve and go extinct. We must seem like insects to her. And yet she wants to talk to us, said Tay. Why? Nobody had an answer. On the 5th day of the journey, Minho came to Yuna's quarters. He was an older man, quiet and thoughtful. His hands were rough from decades of work, and his eyes carried a weight that never seemed to lift. May I speak with you? He asked. Yuna invited him in. They sat across from each other in the small room, the stars streaming past the viewport. I was there at first contact, Minho said. Did you know that? Yuna nodded. She knew his record. He had been on the research station that the Korath had attacked without warning. He was one of only 12 survivors. Something happened during that battle, Minho continued. Something I have never forgotten. He told her the story. The station was falling apart, fire and smoke everywhere. Minho had been trapped in a corridor with a young soldier named Dohun. They had fought their way through the wreckage, trying to reach the escape pods. A Korath warrior had found them. It was huge, armed with weapons that could tear through metal like paper. Dohun had attacked it with nothing but a metal pipe. The alien had struck him down with a single blow. But Dohun had gotten back up. His arm was broken. Blood poured from a wound on his head. By all logic, he should have been dead, but he stood up, raised his pipe, and prepared to fight again. The Korath warrior had frozen. Minho had seen its eyes, those strange alien eyes, and he had recognized the emotion in them. Terror, pure terror. The warrior had whispered something in its own language. Then it had fled. A creature twice their size, armed with advanced weapons, had run away from a wounded man with a pipe. I never found out what it said, Minho told Yuna. Dohun died an hour later, but I never forgot that look. The Korath are afraid of us. I do not know why, but they are. Yuna thought about this for a long time after Minho left. Why would the masters of the galaxy fear humanity? Humans were small, weak. Their civilization was barely 2 centuries old. They had no great technology, no ancient wisdom, no overwhelming numbers, and yet something about them made the Korath afraid. Yuna needed to find out what it was, because in that fear, she sensed lay the key to everything. The horizon flew on through the darkness, carrying its small crew toward an uncertain future. Behind them, Earth grew farther and farther away. Ahead of them, the heart of the Korath Empire waited. And somewhere on Korath Prime, an ancient queen sat on her throne and thought about the strange, small creatures that had refused to die. She had questions for them, questions that had haunted her for 5 long years. The planet filled the viewport as the horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of Earth, with swirling violet clouds and vast silver oceans. The cities were visible even from orbit. They glittered like scattered diamonds across the continents, connected by lines of light that might have been roads or rivers or something humans had no word for. 10,000 years of civilization, Hana whispered. She stood beside Yuna, her eyes wide. They were building empires when humans were still living in caves. Tay said nothing. His hand rested on the weapon at his hip. He had not relaxed since they entered Korath space. A voice crackled through the ship's communication system. It spoke in the Korath language first, then switched to heavily accented human speech. Human vessel. You will follow the designated flight path. Do not deviate. Any deviation will be considered an act of war. Friendly welcome, Minho muttered from his station. Yuna took a slow breath. Follow their path, she ordered. Exactly as they say. The horizon descended through the violet clouds. As they broke through, Yuna saw the capital city for the first time. It was enormous beyond anything she had imagined. Towers of crystal and metal rose miles into the sky. Ships of every size moved through the air like fish in a vast ocean, and everywhere there were Korath. They landed on a platform near the center of the city. The moment the ship touched down, Yuna felt the difference in gravity. Everything was heavier here. Her legs ached just from standing. "Stay alert," Tay said to his small team of soldiers, "but do not provoke them. We are guests here." "Are we guests?" one soldier asked quietly. "Or prisoners?" Nobody answered. The platform doors opened, and Yuna got her first close look at a Korath in person. She had seen images and videos, of course, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. The Korath were giants. The smallest of them was at least 8 feet tall. Their bodies were covered in scales that shifted color in the light, from deep purple to bright silver. They had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. Their faces were almost human in shape, but their eyes were wrong, too large, too dark, like looking into pools of black water. The leader of the welcoming party stepped forward. He wore armor made of some dark metal, and his scales were the color of dried blood. When he spoke, his voice was deep and cold. "I am Commander Rin. I speak for the Queen in matters of war and security." He looked down at Yuna with those terrible dark eyes. "You are smaller than I expected. Size is not everything," Yuna replied calmly. Something flickered in Rin's eyes. Was it anger or something else? "Follow me," he said. "The Queen will see you tomorrow. Tonight, you will rest in the quarters we have prepared." They walked through the city. Yuna tried to observe everything. The buildings were ancient but well maintained. The streets were clean and orderly. The Korath citizens moved past them in steady streams, going about their daily lives. But something was wrong. Hana noticed it first. She leaned close to Yuna and whispered, "They are avoiding us." Yuna looked more carefully. Hana was right. The crowd parted around them like water around a stone. No Korath came within 10 feet of the humans. Even the guards who escorted them maintained a careful distance. At first, Yuna thought it might be disgust. The Korath saw humans as lesser beings, surely. Perhaps they did not want to get too close to such primitive creatures. But that did not explain the way they looked at the humans. Quick glances, nervous movements, mothers pulling their children away. It looked like fear, but that was impossible. These were the Korath, the rulers of the galaxy, the destroyers of civilizations. Why would they fear a handful of small, soft humans? The quarters they were given were surprisingly comfortable. Large rooms with soft beds and windows that looked out over the glittering city. Food was provided, strange but edible. Water that tasted faintly of metal. That night, the team gathered in Yuna's room to talk. "Something is not right," Tay said. He stood by the window watching the alien city. "They treat us like we are dangerous. But we have no weapons, we have no army. We are 4 humans and a small ship. Maybe they think we are spies," one soldier suggested. "No," Hana said slowly. She had been quiet all day, thinking. "I have been watching them carefully. Their body language, their micro-expressions. I study alien biology. I know what fear looks like in different species." She looked at the others with troubled eyes. "They are afraid of us. Genuinely afraid. Not just cautious, afraid." Minho nodded. "I told you. I saw the same thing during first contact. That warrior ran from a wounded human. These are creatures that have conquered 1,000 worlds, and they run from us." "But why?" Yuna asked. It was the question that would not leave her mind. "We are not stronger than them. We are not smarter. Our technology is centuries behind theirs. What could they possibly fear?" Nobody had an answer. Yuna walked to the window and looked out at the vast alien city. Somewhere out there, Queen Valora sat on her throne. She had ruled for 3,000 years. She had seen things humans could not imagine. And tomorrow, Yuna would stand before her and try to understand why the most powerful being in the galaxy wanted to talk to humanity. There was a knock at the door. Tay's hand went to his weapon, but it was only a Korath servant bringing more water. The servant would not enter the room. He left the container at the door and backed away quickly, his dark eyes fixed on the humans like they might attack at any moment. When he was gone, Yuna picked up the water and brought it inside. He was terrified, she said quietly. A servant bringing water, and he was terrified. What did we do to them? Hana wondered aloud. In the war, I mean? We fought them. We killed some of them. But they killed far more of us. By any measure, they won. So why are they acting like they lost? Yuna thought about the memorial wall back on Earth. Millions of names carved in black stone. Humanity had suffered terribly in this war. They had lost battles, lost cities, lost entire colonies. But they had never surrendered. Even when the Korath burned their worlds, humans built new ones. Even when their fleets were destroyed, humans built new ships. Even when it seemed hopeless, humans kept fighting. Maybe that was what scared the Korath. Not human strength, not human technology, human stubbornness, human refusal to accept defeat, human willingness to keep standing up no matter how many times they were knocked down. Yuna remembered Minho's story, the wounded soldier with the broken arm, the Korath warrior that ran away. What had that alien seen in that moment? What had made him flee from a dying man? Yuna did not know, but she was beginning to suspect. And tomorrow she would face the queen and try to find out the truth. She lay awake for a long time that night, listening to the strange sounds of the alien city. Wind whistled through towers of crystal. Ships hummed overhead. Somewhere in the distance, Korath voices rose and fell in songs she did not understand. She thought about her brother, about the promise she had made at the memorial wall. I will find a way, she whispered to the darkness. I will understand them, and then I will find a way to end this. The violet sky began to lighten outside her window. Tomorrow had arrived. It stretched out before her like a small country. The ceiling was so high that clouds actually formed near the top, drifting slowly between massive pillars of dark stone. The floor was made of something that looked like glass, but felt solid as steel beneath her feet. Through it, she could see light moving, swirling patterns of gold and silver that seemed almost alive. Thousands of beings filled the hall. Not just Korath, but representatives from dozens of other species. Yuna recognized some of them from her studies. The tall, thin Vathani with their 3 eyes, the squat, powerful Gorum with their stone-like skin, the delicate Shurai who seemed to be made of living light. All of them were subjects of the Korath Empire. All of them had surrendered long ago. All of them were staring at her. Yuna walked alone. That had been the queen's demand. The human envoy must approach the throne without guards, without weapons, without companions. Yuna had agreed, despite Tay's strong objections. If they want to kill me, they can kill me whether I have guards or not, she had told him. A few soldiers will not stop an empire. So she walked alone, a small human woman in a simple black suit, crossing the vast throne room while thousands of alien eyes watched her every step. The whispers followed her like wind through leaves. She could not understand most of them, but she caught fragments in languages she knew. So small. Is that really one of them? They do not look dangerous. And underneath it all, quieter but unmistakable. I thought they would be bigger. Are you sure that is a human? Stay back. Do not get too close. Fear. Even here, in the heart of Korath power, surrounded by the mightiest civilization in the galaxy, Yuna sensed fear. The throne sat at the far end of the hall, raised on a platform of black crystal, and on the throne sat Queen Valora. Yuna had seen images of the queen. She had studied everything humanity knew about this ancient ruler, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. Valora was enormous. She had to be at least 12 feet tall. Even sitting down, her scales were pure white, like fresh snow, and they seemed to glow with their own inner light. Her 4 arms rested on the arms of her throne, each finger tipped with claws that looked sharp enough to cut steel. Her face was beautiful in a terrible way, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw and eyes that burned like violet stars. Those eyes fixed on Yuna as she approached. The human felt the weight of that gaze like a physical force. It took all her strength not to look away. She stopped at the base of the platform and bowed her head slightly. Not too deep. Humans did not kneel. Your Majesty, Yuna said. Her voice was steady. I am Yuna. I speak for humanity. Silence fell over the throne room. The whispers stopped. Even the clouds near the ceiling seemed to pause in their slow movement. When Valora spoke, her voice filled the entire hall without effort. It was deep and musical and ancient, like the sound of mountains grinding against each other over millions of years. Yuna of humanity, you have come a long way. You asked for me, Your Majesty. I did. Valora's burning eyes studied her. I have many questions for your kind. But first, I have one question that has troubled me since this war began. Yuna waited. Your people were offered terms, Valora said, generous terms by the standards of this empire. Surrender, and you would be allowed to live. Your worlds would be spared. Your people would become subjects of the Korath. Like all others, it is not a bad life. Many species have thrived under our rule. She leaned forward slightly on her throne, but you refused. Again and again, you refused. We destroyed your fleets, and you built more. We burned your cities, and you built new ones. We killed millions of your people, and still you fought. Her voice dropped lower. Why? You could not win. You must have known you could not win. The mathematics were clear, your defeat was certain, and yet you kept fighting. Why? Yuna thought carefully before answering. This was the question she had expected. The question that confused all the alien species humanity had encountered. Why did humans fight when they could not win? Why did they refuse to surrender? Why did they choose death over submission? Because we do not know how to surrender, Yuna said simply. The words echoed through the silent hall. Explain, Valora commanded. It is not strategy, Yuna said. It is not logic. It is simply who we are. Our history is full of wars where we should have lost. Small nations against great empires. Tiny armies against overwhelming forces. Again and again, humans have faced impossible odds, and again, they have refused to give up. She looked up at the ancient queen with steady eyes. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but we never stop fighting. We cannot. It is not in our nature. Valora was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She waved her hand, and the entire throne room emptied. Guards, servants, representatives of 100 species, all of them turned and walked toward the exits. The massive doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. Yuna stood alone with the queen. The change in Valora was immediate. The cold, imperial mask seemed to soften. She leaned back on her throne, and when she spoke again, her voice was different, quieter, more personal. I have ruled this empire for 3,000 years, she said. I have consumed the memories of 1,000 species. I have watched civilizations be born and die. I have seen things that would drive your kind mad. She paused. But your people disturb me, human. Your people trouble my sleep. Yuna frowned. Why? Valora studied her for a long moment. Those violet eyes seemed to look right through her, into her very soul. Do you know why we attacked your kind, Yuna of humanity? No, Yuna admitted. We never understood. We had done nothing to threaten you. We were barely beginning to explore the stars. Why did you attack us? Valora's expression was strange. If Yuna had to name the emotion she saw there, she might have called it regret, or perhaps grief. Because we recognized you, the queen said quietly, not as you are now, but as what you might become. Before Yuna could respond, Valora asked another question. Her voice was softer now, almost curious. Tell me, Yuna of humanity, why are you afraid of me? The question hung in the air between them. Yuna blinked. Your Majesty? I see fear in your eyes, Valora said. I smell it on your skin. Your heart is beating faster than normal. You are afraid. But of what? Death? I could have killed you 1,000 times before you reached this throne. Pain? We have not harmed you. What is it that frightens you, small human? Yuna opened her mouth to give a diplomatic answer. Something careful and polite. Something that would not offend. But she stopped. The queen had been honest with her. More honest than Yuna had expected. Perhaps it was time to be honest in return. She thought about her answer carefully. She thought about her brother, dead on a distant moon. She thought about the millions of names on the memorial wall. She thought about the war and the peace and the future that hung in the balance. And she thought about what really scared her. Not the queen, not the Korath Empire, not even death. Something far worse. I will answer your question, Your Majesty, she said at last. But I do not think you will like the answer. The ancient queen leaned forward, her violet eyes burning with interest. Tell me, she said. Yuna stood alone before the ancient queen, her heart pounding in her chest. The throne room was empty now, silent as a tomb. Just two beings, facing each other, across the vast distance between their species. You asked what I am afraid of, Yuna said slowly. I will tell you the truth. She took a breath and felt the weight of everything she was about to say. This was not diplomacy anymore. This was something deeper, something more dangerous. I am not afraid of you, Your Majesty. Valora's eyes narrowed slightly. You lie. I can smell your fear. I do not lie, Yuna said. Yes, my heart beats fast. Yes, my body is tense. But that is not because of you. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I have seen your warriors up close. I have watched your ships tear through our fleets. I have buried friends who died fighting your empire. She looked up at the enormous queen without flinching. You are powerful. You are ancient. You could destroy me with a thought. I know all of this. And yet, standing here before you, I feel no fear of you. Then what do you fear? Valora asked. Her voice was quieter now, genuinely curious. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her brother, about the look in his eyes the last time she saw him. He had been gentle once, kind. He used to write poetry and paint pictures of flowers. By the end, there had been nothing gentle left in him. The war had burned it away, piece by piece, until only the fighter remained. I am afraid of what we will become, Yuna said, opening her eyes. If this war continues, if we have to keep fighting you, Valora said nothing. She waited. Humans do not conquer because we enjoy it, Yuna continued. We do not fight because we love war. We fight because we have to. Because something in us refuses to give up, even when we should. She took a step closer to the throne. But every war changes us. Every battle teaches us new ways to kill. Every loss makes us harder, colder, more willing to do terrible things. Her voice grew heavy. We have only been in space for 200 years. In that time, we have learned things about violence that took your empire 10,000 years to master. Valora's expression shifted. Something flickered in those violet eyes. Recognition, understanding. You should be afraid of what we are now, Yuna said. We are dangerous. I will not pretend otherwise. Humans can do terrible things when they are desperate. She paused, feeling the weight of her next words. But what truly terrifies me is not what we are. It is what we will become if this war goes on. Because we will not stop fighting. We cannot. And each year, each battle, each loss will strip away more of our humanity. She met the queen's ancient gaze. Eventually, there will be nothing left. No kindness, no mercy, no love. Just the thing that survived. Just the weapon we made ourselves into. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. That is what I fear, Your Majesty. Not death, not defeat. I fear looking at my people one day and not recognizing them. I fear becoming the monsters we are fighting against." Silence filled the throne room. It stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. When Valora finally spoke, her voice was different. The imperial coldness was gone. In its place was something Yuna had never expected to hear from a Korath: grief. "You understand," the queen said softly. "You already understand." Understand what? Valora rose from her throne. Even at her full height, she moved with a strange grace, like a dancer or a predator. She descended the steps of the platform until she stood only a few feet from Yuna. This close, she was overwhelming. Her presence filled the air like heat from a fire. "We saw it in you," Valora said. "From the very first moment we discovered your species, we saw what you could become." She reached out one massive hand and touched Yuna's face with surprising gentleness. Her scales were warm and smooth. "Do you know how old my empire is, human?" 10,000 years, Yuna said. "That is what our records show." 12,000, Valora corrected. 12,000 years since the Korath began their expansion. 12,000 years since we became what we are now. She withdrew her hand. "But before that, we were something else." Yuna frowned. "What do you mean?" Valora turned and walked toward a large window that looked out over the Crystal City. Her back was to Yuna, her voice heavy with memory. 3,000 years before our expansion, we were prey." Yuna's eyes widened. "There was another species," Valora continued. "We do not speak their name anymore. They were hunters, predators. They saw us as nothing but food and sport. For 1,000 years, they hunted us to the edge of extinction." She turned back to face Yuna. "We were gentle once. We built beautiful things. We made music and art. We loved peace." Her voice hardened. "But peace does not stop predators. Beauty does not stop hunters. Love does not stop death." The queen's violet eyes burned with ancient pain. "So we changed. We became what we needed to become. We learned to fight, to kill, to destroy. We became harder, colder, more terrible than our hunters could ever imagine." She spread her forearms wide. "And we won. We destroyed them utterly. We erased them from the universe. We built an empire on their ashes, and we made sure no one would ever hunt us again." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand. "You recognized us," she said slowly. "Not as threats, not as enemies. You recognized us because we are like you." "Yes," Valora's voice was heavy. "When we found humanity, we saw ourselves. Not as we are now, but as we were. At that moment, 12,000 years ago, when we stood at the edge and had to choose." She moved closer to Yuna. "We saw your potential, your stubbornness, your refusal to die, your terrible, beautiful capacity to survive no matter the cost." Her eyes met Yuna's. "We attacked you because we were afraid. Afraid of what you would become. Afraid of what you would remind us that we are." The words hung in the air between them. Two species, separated by thousands of years and billions of miles, suddenly connected by a terrible understanding. "You think we will become like you?" Yuna said quietly. "No." Valora's voice was soft, almost gentle. "I think you will become worse, because you are faster than we were, hungrier, more adaptable. It took us 1,000 years to become monsters. You will do it in 100. Yuna felt the truth of those words in her bones. She thought about the weapons humanity had built in just 5 years of war, the tactics they had developed, the moral lines they had already crossed. She thought about her brother, the poet who had become a killer. She thought about herself, standing alone in the heart of enemy territory, and realized she felt no fear, because she had burned that fear away long ago. "Is there no other way?" she asked. "Did it have to happen like this?" Valora was quiet for a long moment. "That is what I brought you here to ask," she said finally. "Because in 3,000 years of ruling this empire, I have never stopped wondering. She looked down at Yuna with those ancient, burning eyes. Was there another path? Could we have been something else? Or was this always our fate? Yuna had no answer. She stood in the silence of the empty throne room, facing the ancient queen who had conquered a galaxy and lost herself along the way. And for the first time, she began to see a way forward. Not through war, not through victory, through understanding. Valora dismissed Yuna that evening with a strange command. Return tomorrow. There was more to show her, more to explain. Yuna walked back to her quarters in a daze. Her mind was full of what she had learned. The Korath had not always been conquerors. They had been prey once, gentle and peaceful. They had transformed themselves into monsters to survive, and they saw the same potential in humanity. That night, she gathered her team and told them everything. They sat in her room as the alien sun set outside the window, listening in stunned silence. They were afraid of us, Tay said slowly, trying to understand. Not because we were a threat to their empire, because we were a mirror. We showed them what they had become and what they were still becoming, Hana added. Her voice was thoughtful. A species does not stay the same over thousands of years. They must have been changing all this time, getting harder, colder. Minho shook his head. I do not trust it. This could be a trick, a way to make us drop our guard. Maybe, Yuna admitted, but I do not think so. I saw her eyes when she spoke about the past. There was real pain there, real regret. Regret does not bring back the dead, Minho said bitterly. He was thinking of his friends who had died at first contact. Yuna could see it in his face. No, she agreed, it does not, but it might prevent more deaths in the future. They talked late into the night. There were no easy answers. Trust was hard to build and easy to destroy. The Korath had attacked humanity without warning, had killed millions, had nearly wiped out entire colonies. Those wounds would not heal quickly. But Yuna kept thinking about what Valora had said, about what humanity might become if the war continued. She thought about her brother, the gentle poet who had died with hate in his heart. She thought about the children growing up on Earth, learning to see aliens as enemies, learning to value survival above all else. Was that the future humanity wanted? Was that the future they deserved? The next morning, Yuna returned to the throne room alone. This time, Valora was waiting for her at the bottom of the platform, standing instead of sitting on her throne. She looked smaller somehow, more tired. Come with me, the queen said. I want to show you something. They walked together through hidden passages and secret doors. The palace was enormous, a maze of corridors and chambers that seemed to go on forever. Eventually, they came to a room that was different from all the others. It was a museum. The walls were covered with images and artifacts. Strange objects sat on pedestals. Screens displayed moving pictures of things Yuna did not recognize. This is the memory hall, Valora said. Only the rulers of the Korath are allowed here. It contains the true history of our people, the history we do not share with others. She led Yuna to a large display on the far wall. It showed images of Korath, but they looked different from the ones Yuna had seen. These Korath were smaller, softer. Their scales were bright colors, pink and yellow and green. Their eyes were wide and curious, without the hardness she had seen in modern Korath. This is what we were, Valora said quietly. Before the hunters came, before we changed. Yuna stared at the images. These ancient Korath looked almost gentle. They were building things, not weapons, but works of art. They were caring for their young. They were laughing. We made music, Valora said. We danced. We fell in love. We created beauty wherever we went. She touched the display with one clawed hand. And then the hunters came, and all of that died. She moved to another display. This one showed darker images. War, death, transformation. Yuna saw the gentle Korath being hunted like animals. She saw them dying by the thousands. She saw the survivors growing harder, their scales darkening, their eyes losing their light. We had to choose, Valora said. Die as we were, or survive as something else. You chose survival, Una said. Yes, and every day since then, I have wondered if we chose correctly. Valora turned to face Una. Her ancient eyes were heavy with sorrow. We won our war. We destroyed our hunters. But in doing so, we destroyed ourselves too. The Korath, who existed before, are gone. We murdered them to survive. She gestured at the images on the wall. These are the only memories of what we were. The only proof that we were once capable of kindness, of love, of beauty. Una felt tears forming in her eyes. She was not sure why. Maybe it was sadness for the Korath. Maybe it was fear for humanity. Maybe it was both. Why are you showing me this? She asked. Because I want you to understand, Valora said. When we found humanity, we did not see enemies. We saw ourselves. We saw a young species just beginning to face the darkness of the universe. We saw your potential for violence, but we also saw your potential for beauty. She moved closer to Una, and we were afraid that you would make the same choice we made, afraid that another species would destroy itself to survive, afraid that the universe would lose another light. So you attacked us, Una said, to stop us from becoming like you. Yes. Valora's voice was heavy with shame. We thought if we conquered you quickly, we could control your development, guide you, prevent you from becoming monsters. But we fought back. You fought back. A strange expression crossed the queen's face, and in fighting back, you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that there was another way. Una frowned. What do you mean? Your people do not give up, Valora said. Even when you lose, even when there is no hope, you keep fighting, you keep trying, you keep believing that things can be better. She shook her head slowly. We gave up that belief long ago. We accepted that we had to be monsters, that there was no other choice. But you refused to accept that. Even in the middle of war, even losing everything, your people still believe in kindness, in mercy, in love. Her violet eyes met Una's. You still believe you can be better. That is something we lost 12,000 years ago. That is something I had forgotten was possible. Una was silent for a long moment. She thought about what she had seen. The gentle Korath in the old images. The hard warriors who escorted her through the city. The ancient queen standing before her, carrying the weight of 12,000 years of choices. It is not too late, Una said quietly. Valora stared at her. What? It is not too late for your people, Una repeated. You have not forgotten kindness. You would not have built this museum if you had. You would not have saved these memories if you did not care. She stepped forward, looking up at the towering queen without fear. You are still in there, the Korath who made music and danced and loved. They are not dead, they are just hidden, just waiting. Valora's eyes widened. For a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. You believe that? She asked. I have to believe it, Una said. Because if it is not true for you, then it is not true for us either. And I refuse to accept that. Silence filled the memory hall. The ancient images glowed on the walls. Two beings, human and Korath, stood facing each other in the heart of an empire built on pain. And something shifted. Something that had been frozen for thousands of years began to thaw. Una of humanity, Valora said slowly, I think it is time we talked about the future. They returned to the throne room. This time, Valora did not sit on her throne. She stood beside Una as equals, looking out the massive windows at the crystal city below. I have thought about this for 5 years, Valora said, since the ceasefire began, since I realized that humanity would never surrender no matter what we did. She turned to face Una. I want to propose something that has never happened in the history of the Korath Empire. Una waited. Not peace, Valora continued. Peace is just the absence of war. It is fragile. It breaks. No, I want something stronger. Her violet eyes burned with intensity. I want an alliance, a true alliance. Korath and humanity standing together as equals, not master and subject, not conqueror and conquered, partners. Yuna felt her heart skip. This was not what she had expected. This was not what anyone had expected. Why? She asked. Because alone we are both doomed, Valora said. The Korath have forgotten how to be anything but conquerors. We have lost ourselves in our own power. Eventually, we will destroy ourselves from within. She spread her 4 arms wide. But you still remember. You still believe in things beyond survival. You still know how to love and hope and dream. Her voice dropped lower. Perhaps, together, we can find another way. Perhaps you can remind us what we have forgotten. And perhaps we can help you avoid the mistakes we made. Yuna's mind was racing. This was enormous. This would change everything. The other species in the galaxy would never believe it. Humanity might not believe it. I need to consult with Earth, she said. This is not a decision I can make alone. Of course, Valora nodded. Take all the time you need. I have waited 3,000 years. I can wait a little longer. Yuna returned to the horizon and contacted Earth. The transmission took hours to establish, bouncing through relay stations across the galaxy. When the Council of Earth finally appeared on the screen, their faces were tense with worry. Are you safe? Admiral Kang asked immediately. I am safe, Yuna assured him. And I have news. News that will be difficult to believe. She told them everything. The history of the Korath, the memory hall, the offer of alliance. The council listened in stunned silence. When she finished, the arguments began. It is a trick, General Sue said firmly. They want us to lower our guard. Then they will strike. Maybe, said Counselor Park, an elderly woman who had spent her life working for peace. Or maybe this is our chance. Our only chance to end this war without destroying ourselves. We cannot trust them, Sue insisted. They killed millions of our people. They burned our cities. How can we simply forgive that? No one is asking you to forgive, Yuna said through the screen. I am asking you to think about the future. If we keep fighting, what will we become? The Queen showed me what happened to the Korath. They were gentle once, kind. The war changed them into what they are now. She leaned forward. I do not want that for humanity. I do not want my people to become monsters just to survive. The debate went on for hours. More officials joined the call. Military leaders, scientists, philosophers, religious figures. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had an argument. Minho spoke next. He had been silent through most of the discussion, but now he stood beside Yuna and faced the screen. I was there at first contact, he said. I watched my friends die. I have hated the Korath for 20 years. I have dreamed of revenge. His voice was heavy with emotion. But I have also seen what hate does to people. I have seen good men become killers. I have seen kind women become cruel. I have watched humanity change, little by little, into something harder, something darker. He met the eyes of the council. I do not know if I can forgive the Korath, but I know I do not want to become like them. And if this alliance gives us a chance to stay human, then maybe it is worth the risk. The room fell silent. Finally, Counselor Park spoke. We need to vote. This decision is too important for any one person to make. The vote took 3 days. Every human settlement in the galaxy was contacted. Every citizen who wanted to speak was heard. It was the largest democratic decision in human history. In the end, it was close, very close. But the majority voted yes. Yes to the alliance. Yes to peace. Yes to the chance, however small, of a different future. Yuna received the news in her quarters on Korath Prime. She sat alone by the window, watching the alien sun set, and felt the weight of what had been decided. This was not the end. It was just the beginning. There would be resistance on both sides. There would be those who wanted to keep fighting. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when the whole thing seemed impossible. But humanity had chosen hope over fear. They had chosen the chance of change over the certainty of war. Yuna thought about her brother. She wondered what he would have thought of all this. Would he have been happy? Would he have been angry? Would he have believed that peace was possible? She did not know. She would never know. But she chose to believe he would be proud. The next morning, she went to Queen Valora with humanity's answer. "We accept," she said, "with conditions. We will not be ruled. We will not forget our dead. We will always be ready to fight if we must." She looked up at the ancient queen. "But we will try. We will give this alliance a chance, because we believe it is not too late for either of our peoples." Valora was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have made decisions that affected billions of lives." She looked down at the small human woman before her. "This is the first time in all those years that I have felt something like hope." She extended one massive hand. "Then let us begin, Yuna of humanity. Let us find a new path together." Yuna reached up and took the queen's hand. Scales met skin. Two species, once at war, now bound by a promise. Outside the throne room, the crystal city gleamed in the violet light. On Earth, millions of humans waited anxiously for news. Across the galaxy, 100 subject species watched in disbelief. And somewhere in the space between stars, something changed. Something old and tired began to wake up. Something new and fragile began to grow. It was not peace yet. It was barely even trust. But it was a beginning. It floated in a system that belonged to no one. No planets, no stations, just this single moon, gray and silent, orbiting a fading star. It had once been the homeworld of a species called the Venari. They were gone now, extinct for 100,000 years. No one remembered what had happened to them. It seemed like the right place to make history. Ships filled the space around the moon. Human vessels, small and quick. Korath warships, massive and powerful. And observers from dozens of other species watching in disbelief as the impossible unfolded. Yuna stood on the surface of the dead moon, wearing a ceremonial suit that protected her from the vacuum. Queen Valora stood beside her, towering and majestic in her own formal armor. Between them was a simple table made of stone from both Earth and Korath Prime. The document lay on the table. It was both simple and complex. A promise of alliance, a commitment to cooperation, a framework for two species to work together instead of destroying each other. It was not perfect. No agreement could be. There were compromises and conditions, exceptions and limits. Some humans thought it gave away too much. Some Korath thought it showed weakness. Both sides had reasons to doubt, but it was a beginning. Yuna picked up the writing tool and signed her name. Her hand was steady. She thought about all the people who had brought her to this moment. Her brother, her colleagues, the millions who had died in the war, and the billions who still lived. She signed for all of them. Valora signed next. Her massive hand moved carefully, forming symbols that Yuna did not recognize. Ancient Korath script, from before the time of hunters and wars. When she finished, she looked down at the document with an expression Yuna had never seen on a Korath face. Peace. Cameras broadcast the moment across the galaxy. On Earth, people gathered in squares and streets to watch. On Korath Prime, the citizens stopped their work to witness what their queen had done. On 100 other worlds, the subject species of the Empire wondered what this would mean for them. After the signing, Yuna addressed the gathered witnesses. Her voice was broadcast across the stars. "We did not choose to be thrown into this universe," she said. "We did not choose to discover that we were not alone. We did not choose this war." She looked at the vast assembly of ships, the representatives of so many different species. But we can choose what comes next. We can choose to remember our past without being trapped by it. We can choose to be more than our worst moments. She turned to look at Queen Valora. The Korath forgot what they were. They became the monsters they once fled, but they have not forgotten completely. Deep inside, they still remember what it means to be kind, to be gentle, to create beauty instead of destruction. Her voice grew stronger. And humanity stands at the same crossroads. We can become like the Korath were. We can become weapons, tools of survival, creatures of war. Or we can choose a different path. She looked back at the cameras. I choose hope. I choose to believe that we can be better. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. Valora spoke next. Her voice rolled across the dead moon like thunder, broadcast to every corner of her empire. For 12,000 years, I have ruled through fear. I have conquered through strength. I have built an empire on the bones of those who opposed me. She paused. I was wrong. The words echoed through space. 100 species held their breath. Strength is not enough, Valora continued. Victory is not enough. We won every war we ever fought, and still we lost ourselves. We became the very thing we once feared. She looked down at the small human woman beside her. This human asked me a question when we first met. She asked what I was afraid of, and I realize now that I never answered. Her violet eyes swept across the assembled ships. I am afraid of what we have become. I am afraid of what we have lost. I am afraid that somewhere along the way, we forgot that there was more to life than survival. She straightened to her full height. This alliance is our chance to remember. Our last chance, perhaps. I do not know if we will succeed. I do not know if we can change what we are. But for the first time in 3,000 years, I am willing to try. The ceremony ended. Ships departed. The dead moon returned to its eternal silence. But something had changed in the galaxy, something that could not be undone. On the journey home, Yuna stood at the viewport of the horizon, watching the stars stream past. Tay joined her, standing silently beside her for a long moment. Do you think it will hold? He asked finally. The alliance? Yuna thought about all the obstacles ahead, the distrust on both sides, the wounds that had not healed, the voices calling for revenge, for war, for the comfort of old hatreds. I do not know, she admitted. Tay nodded. He had expected that answer. But I know why we have to try, Yuna continued. She turned to face him. Do you remember what the queen asked me? Why I was afraid of her? You said you were afraid of what humanity would become? Yes. Yuna looked back at the stars. I am still afraid of that. I will always be afraid of that. Because the day we stop being afraid of it is the day it happens. She touched the cold viewport. Fear can be useful. It can remind us what matters. It can keep us human. Tay considered this. And hope? Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, tired but real. Hope is what we fight for. Fear tells us what we might lose. Hope tells us what we might gain. She turned away from the viewport. We need both. The horizon flew on through the darkness, carrying its small crew toward home. Behind them, the Korath Empire had begun to change. It would be slow. It would be painful. There would be those who resisted, who clung to the old ways, who believed that strength was the only truth. But the seed had been planted. In the memory hall on Korath Prime, Queen Valora stood alone before the images of her ancestors. The gentle Korath, who had lived before the hunters came. She had not visited this room in centuries. She had been too ashamed. Now she came every day. We forgot you, she whispered to the ancient images. We buried you so deep, we thought you were gone forever. She reached out and touched the display, but you were always there, waiting, hoping that someday we would remember. Her violet eyes gleamed with something that might have been tears. I remember now. On Earth, the celebrations were quiet. There was too much pain for true joy, too many empty chairs at dinner tables, too many names on the memorial wall. But there was also relief, and underneath the grief, something else. Hope. Yuna visited the memorial wall one last time before returning to her work. She found her brother's name and traced the letters with her fingers. "I do not know if I did the right thing," she told him. "I do not know if this alliance will last. I do not know if we can really change." She rested her forehead against the cold stone, but I had to try, because I finally understood what scared me. She stepped back and looked at the thousands of names surrounding her brothers. "I was never afraid of the Korath. I was never afraid of dying." Her voice was steady now, certain. "I was afraid of looking in the mirror one day and not recognizing what looked back. That is why we have to keep trying. That is why we can never stop." She turned and walked away from the wall. The sun was rising over New Geneva. A new day was beginning. And across the galaxy, in the hearts of two species that had nearly destroyed each other, something new was growing. It was fragile. It was uncertain. It faced 1,000 obstacles. But it was alive. And that was enough.